All right, today we're diving into a ghost story from a small village in Chiang Rai, Thailand. And this is a really chilling one. But what's so interesting is that this isn't some ancient myth. This is a story that was pieced together from people who swear they actually lived it.
I mean, think about it. What if that one ghost story from your hometown, the one that everybody knows, what if it was actually real? Well, for the people in this particular village, the things we're about to talk about weren't just a story. They were terrifyingly real.
And here's the thing, this isn't some tale from 100 years ago. According to the person who actually went and interviewed the witnesses, this all went down just 24 years ago. So for this community, it's still a very living memory.
So, let's start at the beginning. The life of Phee Ja. Now, Phee is the Thai word for ghost or spirit. And to really get the ghost, you first have to understand the person. Our story starts with a woman named Ja, and her life before the tragedy that would turn her into a local legend.
So Ja was a waitress who came from the city, and she fell in love with a local farmer named Dat. Classic story, right? Well, his parents weren't exactly thrilled about her background, so, to keep things peaceful, the two of them just built their own little house nearby. Life was pretty simple, and soon it was filled with this incredible hope. Ja got pregnant.
And this is where things take a very dark turn. A sudden, tragic death. It all starts with what seemed like just a totally normal ride home.
One afternoon, Dat was taking his wife, Ja, who was now 7 months pregnant, home from the market on his motorcycle. To save a little time, he took a shortcut. It was this rough, unpaved dirt road that went through the rice fields. Faster, sure, but it was just covered in potholes. And then, bam, the motorcycle hits a really bad pothole, and it jars them both, hard. Ja cries out and grabs her stomach. Dat, of course, immediately stops and asks if she's okay. She just brushes it off, says it was just a sharp pain and that she's fine. So, they keep going and ride the rest of the way home.
That night, Det went out to check on his fishing lines. He got back around midnight, called out for Ha, but nothing. The house was just silent. He goes into their room, reaches out to touch her shoulder to wake her, and realizes something is terribly, terribly wrong. Her body was cold. Ha had passed away in her sleep, and nobody had any idea why.
Now, what happens next? This part is absolutely crucial to the entire story. See, back then, this little village temple didn't have a professional undertaker, so the funeral rites were handled by a local elder. He meant well, but he missed one critical step you're supposed to take for a pregnant woman. Her body was cremated whole, with her unborn child still inside. And that single mistake, well, that's what was believed to have started the haunting.
So, after Ja's death, what was a personal tragedy started to bleed out into the whole community. It began with 3 very specific, very terrifying encounters.
The first person to have a confirmed sighting was this guy named Porn. He was kind of the village's sound guy, He'd set up the speakers and music for all the local events, weddings, funerals, you name it.
So, Porn's working this ceremony late one night. It's around midnight, and he's about to pack it in. He glances over at his equipment one last time, and there she is, Phee Ja, just sitting on top of his sound console, hands on her knees, looking right at him with this calm little smile. He's frozen, terrified. He slowly reaches over, squeezes his wife's hand. She wakes up, looks where he's looking, and she sees the exact same thing. Without saying a word, they both just slid down under their blanket and stayed there, completely paralyzed with fear until the sun came up.
Okay, if you thought that was creepy, the next encounter happened to a local fisherman named Lung Thong. This guy had worked the waters his entire life, never had a single weird thing happen to him until this one night. It's about 3 in the morning. Lung Thong is out checking his fishing lines when he hears a woman's voice call his name out of the darkness. He ignores it. It calls again. Finally, he points his headlamp up into the trees, and he sees the ghost of another woman, Phee Ja, who had actually died right in that spot years ago. And then he sees it. Hanging from Phee Ja's legs, just gripping on with her hands, was Phee Ja. He said this icy chill just shot through him. He couldn't even run. He just shuffled backwards, eyes locked on them, until he could finally turn and walk home, stiff as a board. He threw down his fishing gear and swore he would never, ever go fishing at night again.
The final key sighting came from a total stranger, someone just passing through. And his story, it provided the last piece of the whole puzzle.
So this guy from a town nearby is riding his motorcycle through the village late at night, and he sees a woman walking with a small child. He pulls over, offers them a ride, and she accepts, telling him where they need to go. They're just chatting normally on the way. But when he pulls up to the house and turns around to let them off, they were gone, just vanished from the back of his bike.
A ghost's true nature. A woman and a small child. When news of that third sighting got around the village, it was like a light bulb went off for everybody. Everything clicked. This wasn't just the ghost of PG. This was something else, something much more powerful.
And that was the big question everyone was asking, right? Why was Phee Ja's spirit so active, so powerful? Why was she showing up with other ghosts, and now with a child? The answer, it turns out, was buried deep in Thai folklore.
The villagers finally realized what they were dealing with. It's a type of spirit known in Thai folklore as a Thai Thong Klom, the spirit of a woman who dies while she's pregnant. The belief is that because the mother and child die together, their two spirits are bound into a single, incredibly powerful entity. This explained everything, the intensity of the hauntings, and, of course, the sudden appearance of a child spirit. That mistake at the funeral, it had unleashed this formidable spirit on the village.
And so, once they had this understanding, the story of Phee Ja began its final transformation. It went from being an active source of terror into a permanent part of the village's history. See, once the villagers understood why this was all happening, the fear was still there, but it had context. It wasn't some random, evil force anymore. It was the result of a specific tragedy. And over time, the sightings got less and less frequent, and eventually they just stopped altogether. But the story? Oh, the story was never forgotten. It became a cautionary tale, passed down to new generations, a defining piece of their local lore. When you really break it down, the story of Phee Ja is so much more than just a spooky tale. It's a perfect example of how small communities use stories to process grief and to make sense of the things they can't explain. And you have to remember, underneath all the supernatural stuff lies this incredibly human tragedy of a young family that just never got to be.
And it really leaves you with a final thought, doesn't it? Think about the local legends, the ghost stories from where you grew up. How many of them, if you were to dig deep enough, might have also started not with some monster, but with a real tragedy and a real person whose name we've all just forgotten?